Hey everyone, thanks for joining our live session on internal security versus 24/7 SOC. I'm excited to welcome our speakers today, Andres Ruz, Director of Information Security with Meriplex, and Karn Griffen, CTO at Stratozen. Andy, ready to kick it off?
Yeah, thank you, Macy, and we're very happy to have Stratozen with us today. We're doing a lot of these videos, so maybe we should start explaining who is Stratozen and what is the relationship with Meriplex. So Stratozen, to make the long story short, is our SOC. Pretty much everything that relates to information security from a SOC side, we trust Stratozen as a partner of us to pretty much take care of every customer that we have. So we're very happy with this relationship that we have with this great team, and looking forward, Karn, to getting this video together. So this is the agenda. Oh, we're happy to have you. So this is the agenda that we have today. We're going to go one more time with the introduction of the Center for Internet Security and their controls and how we position our security. Then we're going to talk a little bit about maintenance and how logs should be managed for every organization. We're going to have some games of you being a SOC analyst for the day with some interesting questions for you to be able to practice. And then Karn is going to explain what is a SOC. Some people have some misconception of what a SOC is. We're going to spend some time there, and we're going to close with some key takeaways. So let's talk a little bit about the Center for Internet Security. So I'm a big fan of this organization. They have these 20 controls, and pretty much our framework for our MSSP products is based on this framework. These controls has been around for a long time, and every time that there is a new release, as you can see, we're in 7.1, there is a lot of collaboration between public and private sector that we pretty much collaborate to create and improve these controls. Meriplex and me are part of 7.1, and we're also collaborating in the next version too. So there is a lot of collaboration between these sectors to improve these controls. Now, when we talk about what the SOC should be doing related to these controls and how pretty much these two come together with the SOC, we're going to talk about something that is called cyber hygiene, and we're going to specifically talk about control number 6, which is maintenance, monitoring, and analysis of your audit logs. Now, just from a theoretical perspective, what this actually means is that you have to collect your logs, pretty much analyze and correlate those logs to pretty much prevent, detect, and start and recover from an incident. So this is something that normally a SIEM solution will do. There is a big difference between a syslog and a SIEM. The syslog is just a depository of logs that it has its purpose. It's very, very important in an ecosystem, in a security ecosystem. But what the SIEM is going to do is going to collect from all different devices those logs and correlate them, analyze them with certain rules that is going to make you aware of certain things that you have to pay attention for. Just from this slide, remember that whenever you collect these events, these logs, you're trying to prevent, detect, understand, at the same time, recover from a security event. Today, there's no alternative of having a solution like a SIEM in place to understand what's going on within your environment. Now, let's play that you are the SOC analyst for a day and you have a solution. In our case, we use FortiSIEM, and you're looking at this, right? And you're saying, okay, I'm going to ask you guys, so please go ahead and send us your comments. What are the 2 or 3 things that you want to investigate from these events? And again, the idea is for one day, you're going to put the hat of a SOC analyst and you're going to wake up one day, open your dashboard, and you're going to see this. So just tell me a couple of things that you will investigate. You know, my wife, Karn, will tell me that I'm very basic with colors, so she will tell me, you probably will understand the green, the yellows, and the red. So she will tell me, you probably want to understand that.
Yeah.
So she would say,
we just look at the red, right?
Right. You should say, hey, look at the reds. That's probably the best indication. And to be fair, sometimes that's the case. But if you were watching at this slide, what are the 2 or 3 things that you will take a look? Let's see the comments from the audience to see what are the guys saying.
While they're answering there, Andy, it's interesting in that sys control. You have to analyze these events, and it's an easy thing to say in the control, but how do you analyze when you're taking in 1 billion events a day? How do you make any kind of sense of that? And it's interesting. There's not only sys controls, but all of the compliance standards have this, language in there that, hey, we need to analyze things. Well, how can you possibly do that with, thousands of events coming in every second?
Yeah, and we're already. Oh, we have Braden. Oh my gosh, Braden is in the call. Hola, Braden. Braden is one of my favorite guys from Stratozen. Very good. So actually, Braden got the answer. We should not let Braden answer these questions because he's doing.
Yeah, that's cheating.
That's cheating, Braden. So I think Braden got the answer. We have a couple of answers. So the one that I will pay a lot of attention is the brute force with login success, right? But let's talk about for what Karn just said. There is a lot of information behind here that you guys are seeing that only a SOC analyst, a good SOC analyst like Braden will understand. That requires expertise and requires understanding. But I'm not going to steal the thunder from my friend Karn. So let's go to the next slide for us to continue playing like you are a SOC in a single day, SOC analyst in a single day.
Yeah, so these screens are taken from some dashboard elements. And so this is kind of what some of the typical dashboard elements you might see if you were looking in the SIM itself. So what would be of interest here to anyone?
So again, going to the colors, I would say, what is the pink, right? Why pink and not red, right? What that pink means, or what the blue means, related to this color. So not all the time the colors will be an indicative of something that you have to chase. Just FYI, depending on the dashboard that you select. And something to also say, Karn, about this is, remember that sometimes the way that you present this information, all this can be customizable. So every solution will present information in a little bit of different format. And when you guys get this information and consume it, depending on the solution and the rules, and depending on the word that you have put in the SIM, the information can be, as Karn was saying, a lot of noise, or good information that you can actually do something about it.
Yeah, so in this screen in the upper left, where you have those top incidents by severity, so we've already done something there to begin this process of how do we take all of this massive amount of information, and really if about 99% of the information that comes into the SIM is absolutely worthless for security. It's a bunch of logs and information, or it may be worthless, or so you think. But we you see that term there, incident. Incident to us isn't necessarily something bad. It kind of sounds bad. An incident has happened. But really an incident is a grouping of interesting things that have happened. It may be events that are correlated with other events. It could be the context or time that things come in. So this is really the first step, is to take those events and kind of start to narrow them now into incidents.
Yeah. Okay, I think we're
so
good.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go to the next one to see if the team sees something here.
Yeah, so these events are even more of a kind of network traffic, and you can even see some interesting information here as well. Something that you might want to check out a little further.
Okay, don't be shy. Tell me what you see that you don't like, or something that you will push. That this is something that you. Of course, in this case, I think we can use the colors. It's safe to say that in this case we can use the colors because the colors are indicative. So pick one of them that you feel, say, well, maybe this one is something that is not something that they like, or there's some suspicious thing going on here. What do you guys think about this one? And I like to put this graphic when we play this SOC analyst kind of role, because this is showing actually how much information the SIM can produce related to things that are going on within your network that you can push, investigate, and kind of understand. And a lot of that needs to be kind of a baseline within your network, because some of these may be your normal, but some of these may not be your normal. And if you tune your SIM correctly, the reds should probably not be your normals, right? And then your greens and your yellows is where you will always have to move when you talk about net flow that we are seeing here. Okay, so I have someone saying that the 443 HTTPS. Okay, that's correct. So, Karn, why do you think we should investigate 443 HTTPS at that volume?
Yeah, so you said something very interesting there about how you kind of need to know some other things, right? Some context. So the next thing that we're looking at now that we've boiled down to incidents is how can we add context to this? So we see 16 gigs of traffic on 443, and we have some of this blocked out because we don't want to show IP addresses and things like that. But there's some context here that we need to know. It's a machine might have told us that this is something interesting, but now as a SOC analyst, how do we add context to this? And what are the questions that we might ask about this that would indicate to this that this is a problem? I mean, this could be a web server that is delivering files to their clients, and this could be a perfectly appropriate thing to do. We also don't know from this screenshot what the directionality might be necessarily, right? So this inbound, outbound, is the device in question a web server even, right? That would be maybe even more concerning. Hey, this isn't a web server, and I have a connection going outbound on 443, or maybe even worse, coming inbound on 443 to a device that's not supposed to be serving documents or web traffic. And so context next is kind of that really next step on figuring out whether or not something's really important.
Yeah, and I like what you said. This can be pretty much anything. If you don't have the context behind, the number itself will not tell you anything, and you need the analyst mind to kind of investigate that. And this can be data exfiltration. This can be very well data exfiltration, or it can be just a backup running, right? So we have a question for Shesenia. Shesenia is asking, should I be concerned about what's in yellow if this were my environment? Do you want to take that one, or do you want me to take that one, Karn?
Yes, I mean, and that's a great question. So normally when we're setting up a SIM for a client with the SOC behind it, what we're really trying to do, and I'll probably touch on this a little bit on the next slide. I think it's the second bullet on the next slide. But what we're really trying to get at the heart at is what is interesting versus what is actionable. Right. So many times when you stand up these SIMs and analysis tools, you just get flooded with information, and you could have a screen that's all red or all reds and yellows. And that's actually the normal state if you turn on a SIM out of the box and you just run the rules through it. And so that first step is we really want to identify, hey, are there some things that are instantly actionable? What is the action that a client would need to take if they got this type of incident? And we can kind of cleave those off and say, hey, these are actionable. We're going to send an instant notification. Let's take care of these. Then everything else may be interesting. And that's what our SOC analysts are looking at when they're doing their daily review, is to say, is there anything in these mediums and lows even that is interesting? And is there anything that is unusual for this particular client? We can look back over days. We can also cross-correlate to other clients. Is this something that's happening across all of our client base? Do we have a worldwide denial of service botnet that has spun up and it's now starting to affect everybody? And so we have some software inside our SOC that helps our analysts prioritize and triage these things and ranks them in the order that they should look at them. And we also have a way to park these items. So we may have to go through all of the really interesting things really fast, but we may see something in there and say, hey, this yellow item, this isn't actionable right now, but after I'm done, I want to go back and look at this. And so I can park that and come back at a later time and look at that.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny that you say that, and I'm going to change so you can continue. But we, in our incident response, when we work with you guys to kind of work in I call it from deciding what is a security event versus a real incident. That in our own terminology, the customer is the only one who can say this is a real incident. But we help them investigate these things. We tell them, look, this is what you say. We park it, and we're going to investigate with you at a later moment. This is not something that you have to immediately attack.
Yes. Yeah. So there was a question there about how many devices is the SIM pulling from. It can pull from thousands, and part of the slide here, the first challenge that we have is that volume that I mentioned. And if you think about this, if you have a single device that is giving you 10 events per second, which is, fairly average, you're taking in an entire 24-hour period, you're taking in 864,000 events from that single device.
One device.
If you have one device. So even if you have a small client with a firewall, a couple Windows servers, some workstations, maybe a switch, router, or something like that, you're probably taking in 10 times that. So you're already taking in 8 million events from that one client. And how do you make any kind of sense of that? And that the sys controls say collect, manage, and analyze, but many of them stop at that first two, right? They just, okay, we're gonna save some logs, and I'm gonna preserve these logs for some amount of time, but it's really all that data in there is kind of lost.
And then the other thing that they can do is pretty much understand after an event happened, and they're losing the good thing that the SIEM can do for you, or the SOC should do, that is detect these things as soon as they happen, right? So we're not saying that collecting those events is bad if you're not going to analyze them, but at the very end, you're losing a very important leg that the SOC should provide.
Right, exactly. And so when we're in this kind of point number 2 here on this challenge slide, is we're trying to use the machine to make the initial determination of what's interesting or actionable / false, right? And so now, what if we have something that we believe was actionable, but then it turns out that this is maybe normal operating procedure for that particular client? I'll give you a for instance here. We have a rule in the SIM that catches traffic that is unencrypted, let's say normal FTP traffic. And we have a rule that triggers to say, hey, you have some unencrypted traffic. This is not good. But there are clients out there that regularly they have a vendor or something that they have to upload a file once a day. And they have to upload it over FTP because they don't have any control over that vendor relationship. And we don't want that to trigger. So for them, in that one case, from that one server to that one vendor, that's a false positive in a way. It's actually not a false positive, but it's false for them. And so we have to be able to tune those rules so that they can not be bothered by that. And we're really looking out here for alert fatigue. And we don't want to create the situations where they're just blasted with interesting alerts. We really want them to be actionable. I think we have a question here about what devices should I put in the SIM, right? And so it's, obviously the firewall, obviously domain controllers or directory type services. A lot of that stuff is moving to cloud-based services as well. So you have your, Office 365 and cloud-based services. Some clients use things like the Dropbox or Google Drive or things like that to host their files. So really, you're looking at where the files are stored, where authentication happens, where traffic in and out. And one of the really neat things over these last couple of years is that each of those solutions has gotten better. If you look at a firewall today, it's typically not just a firewall. It's probably has some form of unified threat management, maybe some web content filtering, maybe some IPS, maybe some, other tools that can be fed into the SIEM. And the same with the point solutions. There are good pieces of software out there, and if we can get that data into the SIEM, that's all to better correlate with what else is going on.
Yep.
So next, something that some people may not realize is that, well, robots are not humans. I hope we all realize that. But
I met some IT people in my career that would challenge that. That's
yeah.
that's the only thing I want to say.
So the trick here is let the machines do what machines do well. But if you think about it, when you're writing a rule set, or we have this kind of global rule set that's been adopted over 10 years and really hammered into this kind of fine piece of machinery, and we're adding rules all the time to catch new things, or as new products, as I just talked about, come out, we might need a new rule for that new product that came out. But if you think about that, it's really the creativity of the person creating that rule and saying, what could happen? What do we need to look for? And so the machine is still limited. And even if you do some AI and machine learning type activities, you're still limited by what you feed to the machine, right? You either have given it a rule, or you've given it something to learn, but that's the boundaries for which that machine can act. There is still a lot of things that a human can do with critical thinking and imagination and creativity and strategic thinking that really comes into play after the fact. And so we queue up for our SOC analysts a view for them that gives them the best possible way to attack this. And we're looking for what are the things that a machine might not have caught. And we certainly don't want to manage it like the FAA. If the FAA makes a new rule every time a plane falls out of the sky, well, that's not how we want to do this. We don't want to wait for something bad to happen and then make a rule for it. We want to look ahead, and we want to look at those yellows that someone mentioned on the call, that what is there that might be interesting, or that 16 gig action that was out. Is there a rule that we should make there before it happens, or before it becomes something serious?
Okay, we have another question. Tim, do we really feel that customers truly knows what is just noise or what is serious? Should they have any advanced team monitoring this for them? So I can take this one if you don't mind, Karn. So normally when we engage customers for us to deploy the SIEM with the SOC next to it, my experience with this is that they do not know what we're pretty much doing behind the scenes for them. And even when we read some of the reports from the SIEM, even at that point, it's complicated for them to understand, because this is a very technical solution that requires a lot of expertise. If you open the rules in the SIEM and you try to understand them without any context, some of them are going to be Chinese. If you don't understand, for example, what is a TCP half scan, those are things that you just have to understand from a security perspective what they are, so you can explain to them. So the experience with the customers that we face is that even if they have someone that understands this, they don't have a group of people that is going to be, monitoring this 24/7. And with the amount of events that Karn was explaining, normally they require an advanced team that they can escalate, they can collaborate, and they can tune these rules effectively. And that's why we partner with the Stratozen, because they have those teams. They have that escalation purpose. They have people like Bryden who can work with us to make sure that this is helping the customers to better protect themselves. It's too much for a customer to take by themselves, in my experience.
Yeah, and so you bring up that leads in actually really nicely to the last point on this slide, is coverage, right? So when people are thinking about, hey, I'm just going to manage this myself, I'm going to take all these events in, and I'll write some rules and alert myself. Well, one, you don't know any time the alert's going to come in, right? But if you think about it, if you, in creating a SOC-like experience, or you're creating optimal coverage, you need probably 5 or 6 people just to cover the week. You know, a 40-hour week does not cover a 168-hour week.
Yeah.
And then, you know, people get sick, people have vacations, you have, you know, maybe.
And we're not talking about volume here. We're just talking about the hours of coverage, which is very different, right?
Yeah,
so we just independent of the
hours,
devices.
Sure. And if you do, you know, if you're a single person trying to handle this type of flow, you know, you may have to work on a holiday. You may have to respond to something on a weekend. And if you're not kind of classifying these into interesting or actionable and really tuning down that rule set to be accurate for your environment, then that's really hard to cover with less than, say, 5 or 6 people full time. So, you know, just the last thing on this, kind of the takeaway from this, is that it's both a combination of what these machines and programming can do for us, plus the expertise. And you also have to have an expertise that is relatively uniform. You can't always have let's say a tier 1 person waking up the tier 3 person every time there's an issue, right? You need to have a very uniform level of expertise, and you also need to provide internally some ways for those analysts to uniformly process what they're looking at, and to help them find those needles in a haystack, or what I call needles in a stack of needles, really.
Okay, that was great. Thank you, Karn. So to close today, we'll have a couple of takeaways. So if you don't remember anything from this presentation, these are kind of the 4 things that we want you guys to remember after today. So remember that whenever you collect these events, the whole collection needs to work to help you detect, understand, and recover from an attack. It's not versus the other. It's the combination of all those things. That's the first takeaway. The second takeaway is, if you do not have a collection mechanism for this, you may be attacked right now and you don't know about it. This may be happening in your network right now and can be unnoticed for X amount of days, X amount of months, without you realizing that that's going right now in your network.
Yeah, and third there, you know, just monitoring the full security stack really requires both the expertise and the availability of that expertise at your disposal. And lastly, we want to let the machines do what they do best, and we want to let the people do what they do best, and give them the tools to be successful to do that.
Correct. So remember these 4 things. And again, this is a short video about why it's important for you guys to have a SOC and a partner on security. Please contact Stratozen Content Meriplex and let us know how we can help you. There's the email. And you have a great day. Karn, thank you so much for the time. You did great. Hope to have you in another video soon.
All right. Thank you very much for having me.
Bye, guys.